Joseph in Egypt, from pit to palace, a story of faith, forgiveness, and providence. Part 1. The Dreams of a Dreamer. Joseph was the 11th son of Jacob, a man blessed with 12 sons who would one day become the progenitors of the 12 tribes of Israel. From his youth, Joseph was different from his brothers, not just because of the colorful coat his father gave him, but because of the dreams he had, dreams that set him apart and foretold a destiny far beyond the fields of Canaan. Joseph's father, Jacob, loved him more than any other of his children, for he was the son of his old age, and he made him a richly ornamented robe, often called the coat of many colors. This garment, vibrant and unique, was a visible sign of Jacob's special affection, but it also sowed the seeds of jealousy in the hearts of his brothers. Joseph did not keep his dreams to himself. He told them to his family, which only increased their envy and hatred. In one dream, Joseph saw himself and his brothers binding sheaves in the field. His sheaf stood upright, while his brothers' sheaves gathered around and bowed down to it. In another, the sun, moon, and 11 stars bowed before him. He interpreted these dreams as signs that he would one day rule over his family, but his brothers could only see arrogance and boastfulness. This jealousy led them to plot against Joseph. They hated him so much that when Joseph approached them one day in the fields, they seized him and threw him into an empty cistern. But it was not just a moment of cruelty. It was the start of a series of trials that would lead Joseph to Egypt and a destiny he could never have imagined. Part 2. Betrayal and Despair. Joseph's brothers sat down to eat, and as they looked up, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelite traders approaching from afar. Seeing an opportunity, Judah proposed a darker plan. Instead of killing Joseph, they would sell him as a slave to these traders and let him go far away. The brothers stripped Joseph of his colorful robe and sold him for 20 pieces of silver. His heart must have shattered as he was dragged away, bound for Egypt, while his brothers covered the robe in goat's blood and showed it to their father, Jacob, saying that a wild beast had devoured Joseph. Jacob was devastated, mourning deeply for his beloved son. Meanwhile, Joseph was taken far from the land of his birth, a stranger in a foreign land. In Egypt, Joseph was sold to Potiphar, one of Pharaoh's officials, captain of the guard. Despite his dire circumstances, Joseph's spirit remained strong. He worked diligently, earning the trust of Potiphar. His master saw that the Lord was with Joseph, making all he did successful. Joseph's life seemed to be on a hopeful path once more. Yet the challenges were far from over. Part 3. Faith tested in Potiphar's house. Joseph's steadfast character and unwavering faith began to shine even in captivity. Potiphar noticed how Joseph excelled in every task, and soon he placed Joseph in charge of his entire household. Everything Joseph managed flourished. His master's estate prospered under Joseph's oversight. But Potiphar's wife took notice of Joseph, and not for the reasons one might hope. She found Joseph handsome and tried repeatedly to seduce him. Despite her persistence, Joseph refused her advances, remaining loyal to his master and faithful to God. His answer was firm and resolute. "How then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God?" he asked. Potiphar's wife was furious at being rejected. Spurned and humiliated, she plotted revenge. One day, when no one else was around, she grabbed Joseph's garment as he fled her attempt to seduce him. In his haste, Joseph left his cloak behind. Using this cloak as false evidence, she accused Joseph of trying to assault her. Potiphar, enraged and feeling betrayed by the servant he had trusted, had Joseph thrown into prison without a fair trial. It was a harsh and cruel punishment for a man who had only sought to do right. But even in the dark and confined prison, Joseph's character remained unbroken. The Lord was with him still. The prison keeper saw that Joseph was trustworthy and placed him in charge of all the prisoners. Part 4. Dreams Behind Bars. While imprisoned, Joseph met two of Pharaoh's officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, both of whom had fallen out of favor with the king. They each had troubling dreams, and Joseph, gifted with God's wisdom, offered to interpret them. The chief cupbearer dreamed of a vine with 3 branches that blossomed and produced grapes. He pressed the grapes into Pharaoh's cup and gave it to him. Joseph interpreted the dream to mean that within 3 days, the cupbearer would be restored to his position. The chief baker dreamed of 3 baskets on his head, filled with baked goods, but birds came and ate them. Joseph told him this meant he would be executed within 3 days. Joseph asked the cupbearer to remember him and mention him to Pharaoh once he was restored. 3 days later, Joseph's interpretations came true. The cupbearer was reinstated, and the baker was executed. But the cupbearer forgot Joseph, and he remained in prison for 2 more years. Part 5. From Prison to Palace, Pharaoh's Troubled Dreams. 2 full years passed in the prison's cold shadows. Joseph, though forgotten by the cupbearer, never lost hope or faith. And then, Pharaoh himself was troubled by dreams that none of his magicians or wise men could interpret. Pharaoh dreamt of 7 healthy cows emerging from the Nile, followed by 7 gaunt, ugly cows that devoured the healthy ones. Then he saw 7 full ears of grain swallowed by 7 thin, withered ears. Both dreams carried the same ominous message, but Pharaoh's wise men were at a loss. Finally, the cupbearer remembered Joseph and told Pharaoh about the Hebrew prisoner who had interpreted dreams accurately before. Pharaoh sent for Joseph, who was quickly brought from the dungeon into the royal presence. Standing before Pharaoh, Joseph spoke humbly but confidently, "It is not in me. God will give Pharaoh an answer of peace." He listened carefully as Pharaoh recounted his dreams. Joseph explained that both dreams were a warning from God, signaling 7 years of great abundance across the land, followed by 7 years of severe famine. The dreams were doubled to assure Pharaoh that this would surely come to pass. But Joseph did not stop there. He proposed a plan. Pharaoh should appoint a wise and discerning man to oversee the collection and storage of surplus grain during the 7 plentiful years, creating a reserve to sustain Egypt during the years of famine. Pharaoh saw the wisdom in Joseph's words and was impressed by his insight and faith. Without hesitation, he declared, "Can we find such a one as this, a man in whom is the Spirit of God?" Then Pharaoh appointed Joseph as his second in command, giving him authority over all the land of Egypt. He clothed Joseph in fine linen, placed a gold chain around his neck, and had him ride in the royal chariot as crowds hailed him as the Savior of Egypt. Part 6. Preparing Egypt for famine. Joseph's new role was a monumental responsibility. He traveled throughout Egypt, commanding the collection of 1/5 of all the harvest during the 7 years of plenty. Grain was gathered and stored in vast storehouses in every city, from the bustling capital of Memphis to the distant towns along the Nile. Joseph's administration was meticulous, efficient, and inspired by divine guidance. He appointed trustworthy overseers and created systems to ensure that nothing was wasted. The granaries brimmed with the bounty of the land. When the famine finally came, it struck not only Egypt but the surrounding nations as well. People from far and wide came to Egypt to buy grain. Thanks to Joseph's foresight, Egypt was prepared, and its people did not starve. Even the land of Canaan, where Joseph's family lived, was suffering from the famine. When Jacob heard of the grain in Egypt, he sent his sons to buy food, setting the stage for a reunion that would change everything. Part 7. The brothers' arrival in Egypt. When the famine deepened, Jacob sent his 10 sons, the ones who had once sold Joseph into slavery, to Egypt to buy grain. The brothers traveled with grain money in hand, unaware that the man they would soon face was the very brother they had betrayed years ago. Arriving in Egypt, they approached Joseph, now a powerful man dressed in fine robes, speaking through an interpreter, for he concealed his Hebrew identity. Recognizing them immediately, Joseph's heart was torn. The brothers did not recognize him, but Joseph's eyes held the weight of years of pain, forgiveness, and divine purpose. Testing their character, Joseph accused them of being spies. They protested, explaining their family situation and pleading for food. Joseph demanded that they bring their youngest brother, Benjamin, to Egypt to prove their honesty. The brothers left with grain, but also the heavy burden of worry for their youngest sibling, who was Jacob's favorite after Joseph. Part 8. The return with Benjamin. Back in Canaan, Jacob hesitated to send Benjamin, fearing for his safety. But the famine worsened, and the need for food forced him to relent. The brothers returned to Egypt, bringing Benjamin with them. Joseph saw Benjamin and was deeply moved, ordering a feast in Benjamin's honor. The brothers were seated according to their birth order, and Joseph treated Benjamin with special favor, filling his cup with more than enough. The tension rose when Joseph orchestrated a final test. He had his steward secretly place a silver cup in Benjamin's sack. When the brothers were stopped at the city gates and the cup was discovered, Benjamin was accused of theft. Outraged and desperate, the brothers pleaded for Benjamin's release, offering themselves as slaves in his place. Joseph, seeing their change of heart and their willingness to protect Benjamin, revealed his true identity. The brothers were stunned and terrified. Part 9. Forgiveness and family reunited. Joseph reassured them, saying, "Do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life." He explained that the hardships he endured were part of God's divine plan to save many lives. Moved to tears, the brothers embraced Joseph, and word quickly spread to Jacob that Joseph was alive. Jacob's grief turned to joy as he prepared to journey to Egypt with his entire family. Pharaoh welcomed Jacob and his sons, providing them with land in Goshen, where they could live and prosper. Joseph's dreams were fulfilled, but in ways he had never expected. Through suffering, faith, and forgiveness, his family was reunited, and the future of Israel was secured.